So let's start with the basics. Who is Riri Williams? Because before she was trending on YouTube thumbnails and getting review bombed on Rotten Tomatoes, she was one of Marvel's boldest new creations. She was created in 2016 by writer Brian Michael Bendis. She's a teenage black girl from the south side of Chicago with a twist. She's smart, but not just smart, super genius smart. Like, she got into MIT as a teenager, reverse engineered Tony Stark's tech to create her own suit, genius level smart. And if we're being honest, she was created as what they would call a woke replacement for Tony Stark. After Tony Stark went into a coma post Civil War II, Riri stepped in, built her own suit of armor, and named herself Ironheart. Now on paper, that should be a great story. A young black girl genius stepping into the legacy of Iron Man, bringing a totally new perspective to what it means to be a hero, right? Well, not quite. Because the minute she appeared, the backlash came fast. They said she was replacing Tony Stark with wokeness. Others dismissed her entirely. She didn't earn the role. And this was all before she even got her own solo comic. But here's the thing, the outrage wasn't new. It wasn't even about Riri. It was about the era that she came from. Remember what I said about Civil War II? 2016 wasn't just the year of Riri Williams. It was the year Marvel decided to go all in on diverse heroes. We had Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel, Jane Foster wielding Mjolnir as Thor, Sam Wilson taking up the Captain American mantle, and then boom, Riri Williams builds her own Iron Man suit. Marvel said it was trying to reflect the world that we live in, but to a big chunk of its fan base, it looked like they were replacing all their favorites with checked boxes. I don't know if you guys have ever been inside of a comic book store, but as a teenager and in my early 20s, I used to go a lot. And most of the people that I used to see in those stores look nothing like the check boxes that Marvel was trying to fill. And that was their core audience. And because Riri was young, female, and black, she got a brunt of the backlash. It didn't matter that she was a completely different character from Tony Stark. To many fans, she was a symbol of everything that they thought was going wrong with Marvel, especially after Endgame. And you see how the quality of Marvel kind of,
and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, y'all are trash. Like, y'all are so trash.
that perception has followed her all the way into a Disney Plus show, long before people even saw a single scene. So let's get into the actual Ironheart show. Because yeah, we've talked about the controversy, but what about the content? I watched the first 3 episodes of Ironheart, and here's the honest truth. There's a good show in there, but it's trapped under Marvel's bad habits. Let's start with what works. First off, Dominic Thorne is solid. She carries Riri with a mix of confidence, pain, and awkwardness that actually feels real. I don't like the character of Riri yet, but you believe she's a 19-year-old genius who's not trying to be a superhero. She's just trying to survive grief, pressure, and expectation. And Thorne sells that in the quiet moments. That's when you see the character shine. So I know there's going to be growth there. And the fact that she's not a Mary Sue, for those of you who don't know what a Mary Sue is an all-powerful female character that nothing ever goes wrong for them. Everything works out. They have the power to do whatever they want. And pretty much the story is bland because they face no obstacle and no character growth, kind of like Captain Marvel. But with Riri, it's different. She's a flawed character who's actually growing and going through her hero's journey. That's why I said I don't like her character yet. But there is a character there that I like deep. Like, when she becomes who she's supposed to be, I can find myself vibing to Riri. And thematically, the show has depth. There's this ongoing tension between technology and mysticism. Her suit is grounded in engineering, but the villains, I actually think Mephisto is involved. I know, another Disney Plus show and another Mephisto theory. But by the end of the 3rd episode, it's clear that the Hood sold his soul to somebody, and that somebody has to be Mephisto. Which, unlike in WandaVision, it actually makes sense in Ironheart for Mephisto to be there. So the tech meets magic blend, it's fresh. Thematically, Ironheart does try to explore things like grief, genius, and identity. Riri is still mourning the loss of her father, her best friend. She's trying to figure out who she is outside of Tony Stark's shadow, and she's wrestling with being a black girl genius in a world that expects her to either shrink or explode. That tension is real. But here's where it all starts to fall apart. Marvel's formulaic pandering, not just with the character of Riri, but with everything around her. When Riri is first introduced, it was during Black Panther Wakanda Forever. No matter what you may think about that movie, we can all agree that it's objectively Ryan Coogler's worst movie, and I blame Disney for it. They should have just recasted T'Challa instead of making it Black Girls versus Mexican Black Panther. But in that movie, Riri and Shuri created Riri's Ironheart suit in Wakanda with vibranium in the Marvel universe right now, making Riri one of the most powerful characters on Marvel Earth right now. But then in the first episode of her series, she's struggling against street level bullshit. It's kind of giving me whiplash, like, which direction are they trying to take her in? And I think they do this nerfing of Riri also that they can introduce this gender fluid crew of professional criminals where the only straight males in the crew are the actual villains and everyone else is just misunderstood. No hate, no shade, but do we really need a gender non-binary hacker that has no character flaw and is just there for pizzazz? That, along with the Natalie AI being objectively the worst black girl bestie stereotype, the fact that Riri created an advanced AI, all that is overshadowed by the fact that the characterization of the AI is mad annoying. I, for one, didn't know that artificial intelligence could actually suffer from PTSD, but I digress. Marvel had one job: make us care. And they didn't. It just feels like they were trying to check off an inclusion box, which is not fair to the character of Riri Williams. They put a black woman as the face of this franchise, but they're pushing a lot of agendas on the weight of her shoulders, and people are still trying to wrap their head around the fact that the new Iron Man is a black woman. So could people actually get to know her before we try to do this thing where we include every other person in the storyline? Kind of like how in Black Panther, we're still trying to get our minds wrapped around the fact that you're not recasting T'Challa. Shuri's gonna be the new Black Panther. And now the thing that made Wakanda unique, the vibranium, you're telling us that on another continent, a whole nother ethnic group has the same technology. Not just that, but Namor and his people are genetically more powerful than the Wakandans ever were without the technology. Whiplash. Because here's the truth: Riri Williams never actually stood a chance. Before episode 1, before the first full trailer, before anyone saw a single scene, Ironheart was already getting review bombed. It wasn't about her writing, it was all about what she represents. Because we're living in an era where people are calling woke Marvel, and whether you love that term or hate it, you've seen the effects. This started way before Ironheart. When Captain Marvel came out, people review bombed it months before release just because Brie Larson made comments about diversity in the press room. Miss Marvel, one of the most creative Disney Plus shows, got slammed. And don't even get me started on the Marvels. It's not a coincidence. We've hit a point where every time Marvel puts a woman, a black lead, or a young minority character in the spotlight, the reaction isn't critique, it's a culture war. And yeah, I get it. Some fans feel like they're being replaced, that Marvel is tossing aside the legacy characters they grew up with to push what feels like a checklist. But here's the thing: representation doesn't mean erasure, or at least it shouldn't. The problem is Marvel's strategy feels lazy. Let's take the Captain Marvel example. Brie Larson's performance was fine, but the writing, the character development, flat. Carol Danvers was overhyped, overpowered, and underwritten. There was no emotional core. They rushed her arc, expecting us to care because she's powerful. But power isn't what makes us love heroes. It's their humanity, it's their journey. And that's the same trap Ironheart falls into. Marvel thinks that simply inserting a black girl in a metal suit is enough. But it's not. You can't just plug in a black girl and call it progress. That's not representation. Let's be real here. Marvel doesn't know how to write black characters unless Ryan Coogler is involved. We're still waiting for a Blade movie. The first Black Panther movie succeeded not because T'Challa was black, but because the story was rooted in culture, in pain, in real character arcs. Killmonger wasn't just a villain, he was a symbol of black rage, abandonment, and disconnection. And if you guys want a deeper dive into the character of Killmonger and other black villains, check out this video I did about black villains in the comment section below, in the description box below, and up here. But Ryan Coogler, he understood the assignment. When it comes to characters like Falcon, Monica Rambeau, and now Riri Williams, Marvel gives them screen time, but not story, exposure, but not depth. And the fans feel that. Instead of welcoming new characters, legacy fans feel like they're being forced to love symbols instead of people. It also doesn't bring in new fans. People who don't read comic books or watch the movies aren't going to start reading comic books or watching the movies because you made a character black or you made him gay. That's where this backlash comes from, not just in racism or sexism. It comes in the form of this growing resentment that Marvel is pushing progress without putting the narrative work. Representation alone is not enough. It never has been and it never will be. Marvel, and let's be real, a lot of studios are working under this false idea that simply casting someone black, brown, queer, or female is enough to call it progress, as if diversity is the destination and not the beginning of the journey. But audiences are smarter than that. Well, some of us. Some of y'all are just racist and sexist, but the rest of us, we can feel when something is authentic and we can definitely feel when it's hollow. And that's why so many fans are pushing back, not just out of bias or bigotry, but because the execution doesn't feel earned. And this isn't just a Marvel problem, it's an industry-wide problem. We've hit a point where it feels like the majority of these franchises are swapping out legacy characters with diversity stand-ins, but skipping years of world building, relationships, and personal evolution that made the characters beloved in the first place. Think about it. Tony Stark went through trauma, addiction, ego collapse, loss, and a redemption over the course of a decade. Steve Rogers was built through sacrifice, values, and personal loss. You can't expect fans to just accept a new hero because they look different. You have to give them something to feel, something to hold on to. And when you don't, when you skip the development and fast forward to the symbol, it doesn't feel like inclusion, it feels like tokenism. Riri deserves better, and honestly, so do the fans. Because when representation is done right, when it's authentic, layered, and emotionally grounded, it transcends identity politics. It becomes a damn good story. That's why Into the Spider-Verse worked. That's why the first Black Panther worked. Because those stories weren't just about race or culture, they were about people. That's what makes them resonate. So if Marvel really wants to push the MCU forward, it's not enough to introduce new faces. They have to build new legacies, not just swap out the old. And the potential is there with Ironheart. Even though I've only seen the first 3 episodes, I could see her character becoming beloved, but that's if the story actually continues progressing her character and not in the same way that they've done before. But guys, that's just my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this in the comment section below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, peace.